Welcome to the KDrama Show. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Kim.
We're here to unpack your all-time favorite Korean dramas and chat about all the reasons that we find these shows so charming.
And so addictive. And we know you do too, so settle in with some ramyeon and a boba tea while we dive into the KDrama Show with Ashley and Kim.
It feels kind of weird because it's been so long since we've actually recorded a conversation.
And this is weirder because we're not in the same place.
I know. I don't like it.
I don't like it. But we got to do what we got to do when the influenza hits. My family is in rough shape, to say the least.
It was not a kind week at your house.
It was not. There was a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of fevering and some trips to the ER, but we are going to survive, so.
Yes, you are.
So we're pivoting a little bit with this show selection, but I'm super excited for it.
I am too. I think we saw it at the same time, just like the previews for it.
Yep. Scrolling through Netflix, casually trying to find something
else to do. I watched it first, only within like days of you finishing it.
I think the reason that I didn't, I hesitated a bit because this is a bit out of my element. You're more of the, action-y, dark story. And I'm like yes, it must have a happy ending and it must have quirky, poppy K-pop music in it.
Wanna be your girlfriend, yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know. I don't know what made me feel so inclined to start this show, probably just because you're rubbing off on me. It did not disappoint. It was extremely good. So
especially for a brand new drama.
And a short one.
Because it dropped January 9th?
It actually, so part one released on December 22nd of 2023. And then part two released January 5th. Yeah.
Okay.
And season 2 is officially slated to release in 2024, so we already have that to look forward to. That's rewarding because that doesn't happen in the K-drama world. There is a season 1, full stop.
And if there is a season 2, it's usually not because of how something ended necessarily. It's kind of becomes a different storyline.
Right.
Unfortunately, usually disappoints.
Yeah, maybe
not
one
often
or two shows I know that had a season 2. I wish they'd stopped with season 1 because that was better.
Right.
It didn't do it for me. But I think they're kind of jumping on board with maybe the American style of show running, just because why not capitalize on a good thing while you have it and kind of meet halfway. Because this is an abbreviated show. It's still only 10 episodes when you include both parts, which is way shorter than anything you're going to see on American airtime in terms of episodes. I'm excited that there's more. I have high expectations because it's Park SeoJoon. And Han SoHee. Honestly, she is so good.
She's amazing.
So diverse, and the things that I've seen her in, I enjoy her acting, not necessarily the storyline, and that's a soapbox for another day. And Ashley knows how much I have a beef with Nevertheless. That aside, her acting was so good in it.
So, yes, and that's why when watching this show, it was almost like wait, this is the same person?
Yeah.
And I saw her in My Name long before I first saw her in Nevertheless. And so when I saw her in Nevertheless, I was like, I don't know how to feel about you right now because you're supposed to be kicking butt and taking names like you did in.
And now you're a butterfly.
And I'm, what? This is so weird. So definitely enjoyed this show a lot though. And what was hilarious is I'd finished 4 days before you did our entire text thread.
You just started getting texts from me about my low-key fury toward the ending, or where I thought that the show was going to start ending and how I thought it was going to resolve or not resolve. And
what was hilarious though would be
I was baby raging.
It was great. I enjoyed it so much because my phone would go off and go ding, here's another message from Kim. here's another message from Kim. And I'm like, I can't spoil this because it'd be so sad if I told her, oh yeah, this is what happens. And I was like, no, you just have to keep watching. Because
I was like, here's my guess. And then you're like, I could like read between the lines the pain you were experiencing. Did you have a K culture tidbit for us this week?
I did. Okay, so today, us recording is actually J-Hope's birthday.
Oh,
so happy birthday, Hobie.
Happy birthday. I'm not singing this time. I'm done with singing. If they don't know by now,
should know at least the tune of the song. So yeah, today is his birthday, and what's very interesting in my love of BTS is I'm older than like most of them, even if it's by a few months. Actually, J-Hope is the youngest one of the older line that I would call Oppa. The rest of them are younger than me, which is just kind of a little weird. Like, you guys are like the same age as me or a little bit older, and you're these massive pop stars.
And we're watching K-dramas in our basements.
We don't have to go that far.
Oh, it's been a rough week. Okay.
It's been a rough week, but also Valentine's Day, Namjoon and Taehyung both posted on Instagram. I was like, see, I don't need a Valentine. I got Taehyung just posting random things on Valentine's Day. And I was like, okay, I'm good. And actually the cover shoot that he did for whatever magazine was way good. Also, I think it was yesterday, JK's Calvin Klein ad, another shoot dropped like yesterday. Oh. I've seen enough people react on Instagram to be like, okay, we're just gonna not go down this road. I have a hard enough time pulling myself back from fangirling. Like, let's not. It is a very cool ad. Like, it's very well done artistically.
Yeah.
So
yeah, pretty much every Calvin Klein ad I can think of off the top of my head. The dude is like the button-down shirt that's like, and you're like, I would never want to deprive myself from my love of tteokbokki to ever become that chiseled.
It's facts. I made raboki 2 days in a row, so clearly not.
I'm here for it.
Anyway,
anything else?
Jimin posted a couple times. Like, he did like a letter to ARMY, and then he posted again. It was like for the Lunar New Year. Namjoon also posted, and I think Hobie posted as well, actually. So there's been a lot of BTS love that I was needing. I didn't realize I needed so bad. Not related to anything K culture, like update wise. I bought this little notebook off of Instagram because it's me. It calls itself a planner, okay? So it's my BTS, and it says it's a planner. Every single page is like this. So this is how I'm now going to be working on learning Hangul.
Oh, it's blank?
It's completely blank. It's not even like days. It's just lined.
Girl.
So I was like, this is not a planner.
Writing a strongly worded text message.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be an email. Like, this is not a planner. This was an overpriced notebook. So thanks.
But you can still stare at the pictures. It's okay.
It's totally fine. I'm good with that.
Honestly, the cover of that looks like something straight out of a webtoon, which you still need to read, by the way, if you want to catch up on BTS lore while you're in your, desert of content. Go read that after you've watched all of the videos of, like, what does fake love mean? What does
spend hours on YouTube,
And then after you do that, then go read the webtoon.
Do you know how much of my time is already dedicated to so many K-dramas? I have like 5 that I'm watching right now. So.
That sounds like a you problems. I know. Every time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna catch up to Ashley this week, and I'm gonna watch a bunch of things and have something to say. And then you're like, oh, I watched that. I finished that. Oh, I'm watching that. I'm halfway done. Oh, I'm like, girl, I would stay up till 2 a.m. every night to catch up to you, which you're already doing. So I'm not going to anyway. Okay, so let's jump into GyeongSeong Creature. Yes. I had done a little bit of research on this back when I initially thought that we were just going to do like a high level overview, and then as we got into like the details of it, I asked Ashley if we could go ahead and just do an episodic analysis because I was getting way too far down the rabbit hole and there was too much detail.
There's so much that happens
I just feel like to do it justice, we really should take our time with it a little bit more. And because it's a bit shorter, it won't take the same amount of time dedication to. So part 1 released December 22nd of 2023, which like we said, and that was 7 episodes. And then there was a 3-episode release, part 2 on January 5th of 2024. Season 2 is scheduled to release in 2024. It's already been filmed, I believe, but I don't think they've given an official release date, which is funny because on the day that I finished, I told you, I was like, did you know there's a season 2? And you're like, what?
I did not.
I do
So
now.
excited.
So it was written by Kang Eun-kyung, who also directed Dr. Romantic
Love that show.
2 and 3, I think.
I haven't heard 2 is good though.
He created Forecasting Love and Weather, which has our leading girl from
What's wrong with
Former
Secretary Kim?
Kim, Park Min-young. The World of the Married.
I don't know. I haven't heard of that one, so it might be either really, really new and just
Maybe I'm going
I don't know.
crazy here. I've had like 3 hours of sleep. Anyway, My Horrible Boss. He also created that one, which
Okay.
I had mixed feelings about because I couldn't finish that one. He's won some notable awards. 2014, the KBS Drama Awards, he was Best Writer from What's With This Family, which I didn't know that show. And then 2010 Korea Content Awards, the Prime Minister's Award in the field of broadcasting for King of Baking, which also is Bread, Love, and Drama. Or Bread,
Okay.
Love, and Dreams. Sorry, got drama on the mind. It's always interesting to me how there's different iterations of the English titles of these shows, which can kind of
Yeah.
make it hard to keep track of things sometimes.
Well, especially when it's like, oh, have you seen like one that we've talked about, like that I need to watch? It's on my list, The Inheritors, but
Or
that's
the
not
heirs.
or The Heirs. And so, because somebody asked me, I think you asked me, have you seen The Heirs? And I was like, no, I was looking at The Inheritors, and you're like, that's the same thing. Like,
It's a little interesting how it gets translated differently in different circles, I think. And at different times, I think they're like, oh, this will, go
Speak
over
to
a bit better with the audience if we change it to this or something. I don't know, but it hurts my head. So, an overview. A Japanese occupied Korea struggles to maintain its identity as its people are faced with unspeakable atrocities at the hands of the Japanese Empire. Jang TaeSang is employed by the police commissioner in order to locate a young woman whose whereabouts are unknown. That is until Yoon ChaeOk and her father arrive in search of a man named Sachimoto, who specialize in recovering missing persons, particularly those lost to the Japanese occupation. Their goals align with Taesong's just enough for them to form a temporary alliance as they seek to infiltrate a local hospital that has strange rumors surrounding it of Koreans entering but never leaving and secret experiments taking place within its walls. And that's all I got. Cue scary music, because this is an intense show.
This is a very intense, and probably should preface this. This is not a
It's not
typical
family friendly.
Yeah, there is just an overall public service announcement. There's a lot of torture, just like it's very intense. It's very gory. Yeah, this is not a happy-go-lucky, like Kim said, that's more her style of drama. But yeah, it is not for the faint of heart. So if you don't like anything remotely close to that, this is not a show for you.
Go back and listen to What's Wrong with Secretary Kim for a couple weeks and we'll catch up with you.
Yeah.
On our next drama.
Probably for just your own sanity. But if it's something that doesn't bother you so much, it's such a well done show.
The storytelling was phenomenal, and that was kind of what kept me hooked on it. There were moments where I felt like it was a bit much, and I essentially just like held my hand up in front of the screen and watched the subtitles going across the bottom.
Yeah.
But I felt like, for me at least, a lot of the violence that was happening was not just for violence sake. It was to actually propel the story and to speak to some of the themes that the show was trying to speak to.
Well, and it's historically accurate as well for the time that this story is being told. This is fairly accurate. Now, it's a fantasy show, so there's a lot of obviously not real stuff in there, but this definitely happened. type of behavior. So yeah, it's not violence for violence sake, at least in the line of the story.
I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the opening because that is what sparked my interest to begin with. Like I didn't even watch the show. It was I had seen the advertisement and I was like, okay, maybe. I watched the opening and I was like immediately intrigued. I don't know about you, but that's how it was for me. And if you haven't seen it, it's in like this kind of traditional watercolor style maybe, or a charcoal. It's all stills, but they treat it like it's one big flowing picture.
And it's very haunting.
That's a good word for it. I use eerie, but haunting is a very good word for it. So it opens and we see this young girl in a blue dress that's dangling pretty precariously over a cliff from a tree branch. And then it pans away. We presume that the tree branch had broken. She has fallen into the water below and she is surrounded by these small little fish-looking things. It pans again and we see this big blue creature with like these pinchers on its head and these super long tentacles. And then the young girl has broken through a fence and she's now crawling on her hands and knees while foaming at the mouth. So something's clearly wrong with this girl. She ventures into a village where we are met with just carnage. And it appears that pretty much everyone has been brutally mutilated and the young girl is just kind of, chilling in the midst of the scene, completely untouched. There are some strange footprints that are leading away from the scene. But it's not just footprints, it's handprints too. It's like she's on all fours. It seems like these prints are too large to really belong to the girl, but they lead straight to her standing below this dead tree in a red sun. And the red sun is interesting metaphor, I think. So the young girl's face is covered in blood. We cut away to the girl being dragged away by Japanese soldiers with the rising sun flag on their arms. So I'm kind of wondering if that was like indicative of the Japanese role in everything.
I would think so because that's what they were known as.
And so we presume at this point that this is canonically pre-World War II or in the midst of World War II, since the American occupancy actually restricted the use of this flag until 1947, when the Japanese actually continued to use just the white background flag with the one red circle until it was formally adopted in 1999-ish. So the girl has been thrown into a prison or a cage where she transforms into something that we aren't really given details about. But I think that the most, and that's kind of where it ends, but the most unsettling thing about the whole opening sequence is not really like the weird aspect. It's just like the girl's vacant eyes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so yes, the first time I will always watch the intro once for every show because sometimes the song is just kind of catchy. I mean, sometimes it kind of freaked me out.
Same, yes.
The still
I had to pull Chris in and be like, you have to sit here while I watch this.
the one still where it's just her and she has like stringy hair and her eyes it's like her face kind of zoomed in and it comes away with
drool coming out of her. Yeah.
So unsettling.
Yes.
And
yes,
I'm a crime junkie. In case of those who don't know me at all, hi, I'm Ashley. I'm a true crime junkie and a K-drama addict. Welcome to my TED Talk. I've done a lot of research into like some pretty horrible cases. I listen to true crime podcasts all the time. Like I don't go out of my way to look for like morbid stuff, but it doesn't like throw me off. And that made me so uncomfortable that after I watched it, I was like, I don't want to watch the intro anymore. I'm good. It's kind of freaking me out. But the song also was just super good.
Yeah.
It was a perfect song because it was creepy and haunting, but yet you couldn't stop. Like you couldn't tear yourself
away. Yes, exactly. It was so well done. It that in and of itself told a story, which is why I gave it so much time because it was such good world building, even though until you've seen the show, you don't actually know what you're looking at. But as you start, and that's kind of what I started noticing. So I actually, I watched the intro every single time because I was realizing that this was telling the story along with the episode. So I was I put on my big girl pants a little bit.
I mean, I did end up watching it a few more times because I realized that episode 4, I was like, oh, I should probably actually pay attention.
No,
episodes
Totally
to take a
optional.
I needed a few episodes to take a break because it was just unsettling. It was just like
Yeah, it was
so
very, very unsettling. And it was just it was weird because like the medium was so beautiful and the story was so scary.
yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah. So
Ah,
so yeah, great work by the animation team there. So we open our show. We see some Japanese soldiers are being given the order to retreat from their post. Soldiers are ordered to incinerate everything and just get out of Texas. Then we're first introduced to Lieutenant General Kato, who is played by Choi Young-joon. Um, and asks if they're really going to burn everything, and he's told to eliminate all traces of everything that's been done in the facility.
right.
And Kato is then seen in the basement, we assume because there's no windows, but recovering something called the Najin.
And he's very specific about it because it's not just, hey, did you get it? He's like, how many of this did you were you able to get?
Yes.
I remember the first time watching it through it and I was like, why do you know how many of this that you have? What's going on here, bro? Like, you kind of scare me.
You're a bit intense there. Meanwhile, behind him, there's something that's clearly gigantic and violent trying to bust down the door. And the guys around him are kind of like, we good here? And he's just like, I need to know about the Najin. Where are these at? And he's looking at them almost like lovingly. It was a little strange.
Yeah, it's almost like, honestly, it had a Gollum feel
Oh,
of my
yeah.
precious.
Yes.
That's kind of the vibe of just like my.
That's a very accurate, yes. So the soldiers are then across this facility. They're seen burning corpses. There's firing squads that are starting to, mow down prisoners in their cages, just like their cattle. It's horrible. It's horrifying. And
Yeah,
we
they're
see,
dumping gasoline all over everything.
yes.
And
They
then
meant everything.
like when they said incinerate, they're like,
They're setting
yeah,
dynamite against the load-bearing walls. I mean, they're getting rid of the whole
everything.
building. So as it's been being detonated and the building is in the process of collapsing, we actually are able to we get the perspective of one last soldier who bears witness to this atrocity that is escaping from the building. And it is a little bigger than you would hope it to be.
Imagine. Well, and just the pure terror on his face. And he's just like, no, 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 no,
Well, the
no.
guy is on fire and he's more worried about this thing, which kind of
It-
indicates to me that it's a little horrifying.
Right before everybody drives away, Kato is being told, you're being transferred.
Mm-hmm.
You're being sent to GyeongSeong. And that's almost like a more terrifying thought of, hey, you were all excited about these Najin that we have no idea what they are, what their purpose is, why you're obsessed with them. And yet they're going to send you somewhere else and you still have access to all of this stuff.
Squiggly little lines that are
They're,
horrifyingly.
they're gross. They scare me.
I mean, normal parasites in real life, that's enough to send me over the edge. But then you add into this all of the like mythical aspects, and I'm like, hard pass.
And I gotta go.
Speaking of Parasite, Park Seo-joon again. Just kidding. So now we're introduced to GyeongSeong. And I don't know if you knew this, but it's actually GyeongSeong is modern day Seoul.
Yes, I saw that in the rewatch that I did because it's okay. So when this is taking place is late March 1945. Then
Under
it said
Japanese occupation, yeah.
under Japanese occupation, and then it said Gyeongsang, and it was like modern day Seoul, and I was like, I don't know why I didn't like put that together to begin with. Like
I completely breezed over that both times, so you're
I was
fine.
like, oh, that makes sense. I mean, that's the capital. That's all
heart.
information.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
And I think this would actually be before it was the capital, wouldn't it? Because we haven't split the Koreas yet. I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know enough about Korean history. It's embarrassing. Anyway, we can move on. So, we're under Japanese occupation. This is a time where, we have information being traded covertly. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time could end your life. We also have
racism even.
Yes.
The Japanese hate the Joseonjin, is that what they called them?
Chosenjin? Yeah.
Joseonjin, was their term for all of them. They didn't care if you were in cahoots with them, in business with them or not. That's how they looked.
Korean, which I mean, it's technically a very neutral term because all it means is you're someone from Chosun, which is the area they're in.
Right. But it was meant
they used it with so much malice that it became a slur over time because they just were treated with so much contempt.
It's a very volatile time.
Kind of on the world stage in general, but
particularly
between these two nations as well as China, because China kind of, I think, got out of the way in order for Japan to sort of do what Japan was doing. And in, imperialistic time period that Japan is in, they're basically like conquer everything, which is why they got along with Germany a little bit. Anyway, so Korean resistance, we get a little bit of a glimpse of it, and also kind of the consequence of them being caught, brutal beatings, imprisonment, mandatory military enlistment, which they're being sent to the front lines just as a warm body to shoot at. Yeah, essentially.
And if you choose to not do that, your other option is just to get tortured.
Or just to die in the streets, as an example. We move on to Jang TaeSang, who is played by Park SeoJoon. Which we have a lot of affection for. It honestly, we're not even covering this show because it's Park SeoJoon. It just kind of happened to fall into the timeline of things this way.
Right.
But we're not mad about it.
Never mad about it.
Right off the bat, speaking of torture, we see him tied down to an electric chair. It was a bit jarring for me. I was already I don't know if I can do this.
Right. Well, it was not just being electrocuted, it's being electrocuted and they're dumping water on him.
Yes.
And there's just this man, and you can tell that he is a man of high authority. We don't know his name yet. We don't know his position yet. And he is just, he's pissed. He is
something
so mad. And he's just like, stop lying. I need you to tell me the truth. And he's like, I don't know what you want me to say, bro. Like, I mean, yes, we love Park SeoJoon. He is an amazing actor, but to see him in a not romance role necessarily, like right off the bat, we are just
thrown into war times.
He did it so well. It was a little terrifying.
That's funny because the other role that I saw him in before What's Wrong with Secretary Kim was actually Hwarang, which in and of itself has some intense scenes, not to this extent, but still. So I felt like this was kind of getting back to the roots with Park SeoJoon for me.
That's fair.
Because then I saw him in What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, so that was really interesting. But no, he does excellent. He sells it well, and this scene just sets his character up so well because he's so multifaceted. Even though he's in the midst of getting tortured, he has, the cogs are going in his head. He's taking it all in and just kind of seeing, not maybe weasel, but kind of weasel his way out of this.
Right. What can I do?
How he can be resourceful in this moment.
Well, you hear him screaming, and then you see the other side of the doors, and it's two Japanese men standing there. And then one's like, is he a spy? And then one's like, no. Well, is he this? And he goes, no, this is Jang TaeSang. He is the master of the House of Golden Treasure. And then we get a proper introduction to his character. And I loved it so much because it was hilarious because we're going from What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, where he's not a womanizer, but every woman wants him, to, yeah, I want to be the center of attention. Hey, let's party. Hey, let's do this. But then, like, again, he's a very smart businessman who he's known as the king of information. He has connections everywhere. Because then we cut back to he's being screamed at. I think the chair had flipped over that he was in at this point, and he's on the floor. And we learn that the man screaming at him and interrogating him is the police chief or the commissioner, who's Japanese.
Commissioner Ishikawa.
And he is flipping out and he goes, "Why are you seeing my wife? Why did you meet with her a month ago at this place?" And he goes, "She was asking me to see if I could find a tea set for her."
She wanted the pigchalk teacups. She knew that he was resourceful enough to find them, and he did.
But yeah, it went from a month ago, and he's like, and then, what was it, a week ago or 3 days ago, you met her here, and why were you doing that? And he's like, to tell her that it was almost impossible to find this, but I did. And then he's like, well, why did you meet her yesterday? And he's like, because I told her that I found them and I was going to be shipping them to her house. Because then
what more do you want?
And I like that you mentioned earlier of him, like, the cogs are going of like, how can I get out of this? Because he calls him out and he's like, really? You're doubting your lovely wife?
And then we see who really wears the pants in the relationship, who really holds the power.
And he just gets this, the commissioner's just like, I want to kill you so bad. I hate you so much.
But it works. He lets him up and he is untied and they dismiss, the other man in the room. And then he says, "No, do you really want to start talking about exactly why it is you brought me here?" Sure enough, Commissioner Ishikawa was looking for a young woman named MyeongJa. Or later on, we find out she's more affectionately referred to as Akiko. And she had gone missing about a week prior. And no one has any clue. There's no traces. There's no leads. He has set his men on it and found nothing, which is insane thinking of all of the resources that he has and all the authority he has. But he tells TaeSang, he's like, if you fail to find her, you're going to lose everything that you own and you're going to war. You're going to the front lines. And so he has until the cherry blossoms fall. And we learn shortly thereafter that the reason that the commissioner is so intent on finding this woman is that this is actually his lover who is pregnant with his child. So that ups the stakes just a bit.
just a little. Unfortunately, that wasn't an uncommon thing that time frame either for the invaders to come in and be like, "Hey, now you're mine. It doesn't matter if I'm married or not," because
right, because she was a Korean woman.
And yeah, being a Korean woman, so she really has even less say. We can kind of tell that she is in love with the commissioner, though, to be like,
she seems very youthful and naive about it, though. I don't know that she quite realizes
the severity of
the situation at hand, or who she's dealing with per se. I think she thinks that because it's the commissioner, she's untouchable.
It's a little more safety.
Basically, TaeSang's like, what makes you think that I'm going to be successful? And the commissioner says, you must go through Jang TaeSang if you want anything in BonJeong, whether it be money, property, or a person. And that's kind of a common theme we hear throughout the rest of this show. So we're back at the house of golden treasure, or it's actually called Kum Oktang, which kum is glitter, like glitter. Kum is gold.
Gold.
Thank you very much. So we are introduced to kind of the rest of the players. We have Mrs. Nawol, who is played by Kim Hae-suk. And she is kind of the one who runs everything at the House of Golden Treasure. She's been with TaeSang for pretty much his entire life.
She's like the housekeeper, the accountant, the
mom.
Right. Really, Jang TaeSang is like the king of information, but really nothing happens without her. She is highly important.
Yes. And then we have Gu Ka-pyong, which is played by Park Ji-hwan. And he's kind of the butler. He does sort of the dirty work of the team. He's out there in the streets, getting the information, shaking people down, probably bribing at times.
Well, and then he's also the one he's also the that with the House of the Golden Treasure, like it's a pawn shop, and he's the one that decides how much like money to give for anybody's treasures. But he's also very good at that.
Right.
Like
it's good
when
at
we
spotting
first,
fakes.
because yeah, there's one lady who comes up and was like, "This was my dowry. Like I need you to keep it safe." And he's like, "This is how much I will give you. By the way, I know this ring is fake." Like he didn't have to try. And he was like,
I don't
"This
even think she knew the ring was fake is the problem. So
right."
then we have Park Bomo, which is a young boy who also works, and he is just kind of there to do some heavy lifting, not really crafty or anything. He's
the errand boy.
he's the errand boy, and he's very unassuming, which is helpful in their line of work.
Right.
So the team, they're all upstairs in the office. They're starting to weigh their options as to whether they just want to cut their losses and get the heck out of there, or if they're going to try to like ride out the storm. And neither option is really feeling very ideal, because either way, pretty much their lives are going to be at risk.
Right.
But they know that they're being watched extremely carefully, and they have to, navigate this situation very carefully. So they start assigning jobs. Mr. Gu is tasked with chasing down leads with their current informants in their current circle of people, and then Pomo is called up. He's to call upon JunTaek, as TaeSang says he's the only man, quote, audacious enough to mess with Ishikawa's girl, unquote. I thought that was funny.
Quite hilarious.
And then Mrs. Nawol is tasked with selling off, some of their bigger assets so that if necessary, they can make a run for it and, hop on a ship and get out of town.
Right. Not be completely destitute.
Right.
And I liked that scene because he looks out the window as they're having this discussion and just like, oh yep, look, they already have people on me. Like,
let's not waste time.
Let's get this done. And as people are starting to run out, he notices that there's somebody else that doesn't look like it's not somebody he would recognize, just kind of staring at the window. And it wasn't like this person is definitely like interested, but you can tell that there's a lot more that's going to be
different MO there.
Right. It's not, I'm going to report back to Ishikawa and be like, hey, yeah, this is what he's doing. This is where he sent all of his people. This is a completely different vibe. But that's a great introduction into
Yoon ChaeOk.
And
played by SoHee.
Such a great actress. She's so good.
And we also see her father, Yoon Jong-won, who's played by Jo Han-chul, which some of the other things he's been in, one is My Romance is a Bonus Book. He plays the ex-husband, one of the editors, authors. Super great performance.
He's in Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha.
Is he?
He is. He runs a little cafe.
Okay. I've only watched the first part of the first episode, so.
His character is really endearing.
Yeah.
And I like that one. He's in Vincenzo. He plays a lawyer. And I almost hated him the first time I watched Vincenzo because he's just a groveling, sniveling weasel. But he does it like, the acting is so good. Anything that he is in, I have enjoyed.
Yeah.
He's such a good actor.
Well, he is the complete opposite of a groveling, sniveling weasel in this show. So he's earned some redemption in your eyes, I'm sure.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
So they arrive in town. You can tell they're probably not really from around there. They're, they're there for business, not pleasure.
Yeah. You can, this is the way that they carry themselves.
Right.
ChaeOk, like she's wearing men's clothing.
Mm-hmm.
She's not, in a typical just a dress, whether it's
Humble.
traditional or
Right.
modern. Technically, she's like, you can tell that neither one of them are into the fancy stuff.
Yeah, looks like they have what's on their back, and that's kind of it.
Right.
But we find out that they're in search of this person called Sachimoto, and their search eventually leads them down the path to the House of Golden Treasure in hopes that TaeSang, the great miner of all information, might be able to provide them with a lead. So the team from the House of Golden Treasure, as they're sent on their tasks, we see that they're being tailed by Ishikawa's men, which is something that's observed by ChaeOk. She sees that this is happening as she's standing watch outside herself. And she thinks she's being pretty discreet, but she looks up at the window and TaeSang makes eye contact with her, and she's kind of kicking herself.
Right. And it's not just like a glance. This is full on like a good 5 seconds.
He looked into her soul and saw what he saw and didn't like it very much.
Vice versa.
Yes.
With our introduction into the father-daughter duo,
yes,
you can tell that there is, so her dad, they're walking along, they get a newspaper, and then they get given the real newspaper, the newspaper that actually has the correct news of what's going on in the world. And they make a comment, they make a comment of like, oh, so the rumors are true. And it was, it's 1945, so it's getting
kind of air raid had taken place in Tokyo, and
and this is the point, like in World War II, we're starting to wind down, technically, like on the grand scale. And so defeat was closer. But of course they don't want that news to get out.
Sure.
So any type of air raid, why would we want that kind of information reported? That's
right. It's going to make them look weak, and make them look vulnerable to these people that they're trying to suppress, and give the impression, that they are the lasting authority. Which, if Russia had played their cards a little differently, probably would have been. Anyway.
But they stop at this restaurant, and it's called the Moonlight Bar. And her dad walks in and asks the woman was she like mopping or sweeping, just kind of getting the restaurant ready, and goes, hey, have you heard of this person named Sachimoto? Like, do you ever have somebody come in with that name? Like, he's an artist. I'm looking for him. And she just kind of stares at him and is like, nope, sorry, never heard the name before. Don't know who that is. So he's trying to glean some information, whether it's helpful or not. And at the same time, ChaeOk wanders into this little shop where she had seen a motorcycle behind it, and
a very sad looking motorcycle.
It's looking a bit rough. And she goes in and she's like, hey, how much is that bike? And he goes, yeah, that bike doesn't work. Like, it hasn't been ridden in a long time. And she goes, I'll give you, was $250 for it. And he was like, or she named a price, and then he's like, no, I want $250. But again, this doesn't work. And she just gives him a look, wanders through the store, grabs all of this, like a gas can, couple parts, goes, I'll give you $250 final. And he feels so pleased with himself, this shopkeeper. And in the background, clearly you can tell she's resourceful, because she's putting together this motorbike that probably, I don't understand mechanics, I don't care, but clearly it wasn't a severe enough problem, because she gets it running and just she takes off. So now she has just transportation to just wander around. And a bit of me kind of hated her in that moment, because I was like, why don't I have information like that? That would be so helpful.
Spend a couple days with your dad.
I don't want to get yelled at for not holding the light in the correct spot, okay?
Fair.
Childhood trauma.
Yes, we realize that they are resourceful. They are clever in their own right. So they're, even though the shopkeeper is thinking like, I just duped this girl out of, however much money for a broken bike that's never gonna work, and then she just, rides off into the sunset with it. It's very intriguing to see, where these two are going to go and what their story is. But we transition over to MyeongJa, who is seen in a holding cage in this red polka dotted dress. The guards are rattling the cages, which is a signal to the prisoners that we have 10 minutes, which is a signal to the prisoners that, they should come forward. They should sit down on their knees with their eyes down for inspection. And we have Dr. Ichiro, which is played by Hyun Bong-sik, accompanied by 4 guards. And they are discussing amongst themselves that 2 of the prisoners should, meet the need of whatever was going on. Clearly something nefarious, but of unknown consequence, to both us and to the women that are in these holding cells. So they come and select 2 of the women, one of which is bearing this wooden talisman and defiance in her eyes.
Oh, she is so done with them.
Yes, that woman. At first, you're like, oh, she just doesn't care if she dies. But then after a moment, you're just kind of like, she is purely functioning off of her hatred for you. That is what
is rage. Rage is what fuels her.
Yes, exactly. It's kept her alive this long. And so General Kato is now, in GyeongSeong. He's in this area. And he comes and inspects the women as well. He seems pretty satisfied with, the defiant one. And the group exits the prison with the 2 women, and these women are then thrown into these 2 cells, 2 separate cells within what appears to be, this sort of viewing area, like a lab with different equipment around them. And the guards are looking on in silence as these 2 women realize they have been presented with steamed buns and a bowl of water, each of them, which is likely the first food they've seen in days, if not weeks.
Yeah, got to be starving.
Yes, clearly. And so the scene just carries this really ominous tone because no one is saying a word. It's just these 2 starving women that are now shoving their faces full of food before it's taken away from them.
And it's interesting because the one woman isn't even breathing. Like, she's shoving so much in that she's like choking herself.
Right.
And then the other woman, the one with the little talisman, the defiant one, takes a bite, takes another bite. Like, she's like being methodical about this of like, I don't want to get sick almost.
And also probably I know that this is going to not end well for any of us.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for you to just sit there and feed me if you didn't have some ulterior motive. So she's probably just enjoying it because she knows it feels like her last meal or something, you know what I mean? So the scene just takes on this super ominous tone as we watch the women start to consume the water in their bowls, which we quickly realize contained the Najin from the vials that were rescued from the exploding building that General Kato was fleeing earlier in the episode, which is confirmed because of the shot it gives, where he had 8, he now has 6.
And then it shows the actual Najin itself. And that thing is creepy.
Yeah, it gives me some Stranger Things vibes.
The Demogorgon.
Demogorgon, yep, just a little bit.
Little bit.
So we're back outside the House of Golden Treasure. TaeSang decides to jump scare one of Ishikawa's men named Mori, which is played by Lee Kyu-sung.
That was one of the best like comedic things of this entire episode.
Yes, and we've talked
It's
before about how we really enjoy Park Seo-joon's humor and how well
oh,
he plays those moments.
the facial expression, because it was just like I felt like I was in high school again, because like you would do that in high school, like scare your friends, like hit on the window.
Mm-hmm.
Face that he's making and the sound, like I felt my soul leave my body, just like the man sitting in the car. Ha! Jerk!
He has to have fun with those moments for sure.
Oh yeah.
But he comments to Mori that he must be so bored just from sitting and doing nothing all day, but keeping watch over TaeSang. And he's like, why don't you just give me a ride to where I need to go? Gonna tail me anyway. Let's just be efficient about this. We're both gonna end up in the same place. And so he just hops in the back like he's driving a taxi cab. It's hilarious.
Because Morty just is like, okay, I guess.
And then he's like, why am I going along with this? But it's too late now. We've committed. So, all right, I guess we're going. The dynamic between those two for this show is I I love it.
It's very fun.
So, we see Nawol. She is speaking with, one of their informants, and I actually think that this guy was trying to provide them with passage, if I remember correctly. Is that
He's supposed to. She's asking him, "Hey, we have these pieces that we need to sell in this time frame."
Oh, yep, okay, correct.
It's like
he's like a broker.
Kind of, yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. And because she's like, because then he even makes the comment of like, are you guys okay? Like, we hear some weird rumors going on. Like, what's happening? And then he brings
kind of been descending.
right, and he brings up, hey, I feel like there's these people that you should meet.
Yeah.
They're they're really good at what they do, and they've just recently got in town. I feel like it would be very beneficial for whatever you have going on here.
And he even gives the example. He says, there was this family that was trying to find their daughter that was sold off as a comfort woman, which I don't know if you're not familiar with that piece of Korean history. This was a very dark time for the relationship between Japan and Korea, as we've talked about, but there was this really common practice where the Japanese soldiers would kidnap these young Korean women and then use them as sex slaves while they were, traveling around the country. So it was pretty much just as brutal as you would hope it wasn't. It was awful. And Korea and Japan have had this really rocky relationship regarding this whole aspect of the slavery thing. Japan won't issue a formal apology. Korea feels like they need one and deserve one. And as of May of 2023, there were only 9 of the about 230 to 250 women still alive to this day. And they're all aged between 90 and 97 years old. So they're kind of, their generation is coming to an end. But it's so interesting how I just wonder what goes into that whole dynamic between like, why not give an apology? And then why need one from 90 years ago? I don't know. Anyway, I digress. It's fascinating history, though.
It is fascinating history. Sort of terrifying, but
it's awful. But anyway, so ChaeOk is now tailing TaeSang, who is looking a little beat up from the day's events, honestly.
Well, snap Mori and being like, "You're gonna just take me here now."
Yeah. So he now has his own private chauffeur. I love it.
Mori.
Willing or unwilling. So TaeSang actually arrives at a tea house, I think, or a restaurant, something of that nature.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not not before leaving Mori with a very generous cash gift. Probably,
Like, I'm gonna be here for a while. You might as well eat. I
yeah.
won't tell her. It's fine.
The way he gave it to him was so aggressive to where I was like, okay, he's either going to like use it as blackmail to tell Ishikawa that he's been paid off, or just something, there's something else to it. You know what I mean? He was like,
Right.
Take it." So,
Sure.
um, but as he's going up the steps into the restaurant, he notices that his shadow has followed him from the alley outside of House of Golden Treasure and is now parked across the street in her new motorbike.
Yes, she is.
Yes. So Mori is now counting his newly acquired cash and notices the sentiment penned from Taesong in Japanese, which is
You
idiot.
idiot.
I was like, there it is.
And it's on the last bill too, because he's like counting it, like, look
Yes.
how much we have, and the look on his face when he reads idiot is just like,
I deserved
I'm
that.
I'm gonna die. It's fine. I'm going to it's gonna end. It's going to end.
Yep, I just got bested. So, Taesong is using the tea house as a way to shake his tail, both of them. But it was unsuccessful. He decides to use a more direct approach, and as he's going down these alleyways, weaving around corners and stuff, he finally scales a wall so he can circle back on ChaeOk. And he questions her at gunpoint, but he notes that she doesn't seem like she's one of Ishikawa's underlings, and then we get this very intricate, very almost dance-like
Yes. Great way to put it.
fight scene between these two. It was very almost beautiful in a way.
It was almost flirtatious, except that he didn't know that
Right,
ChaeOk was
right,
so that this like you could almost say it was because we know that.
right.
But this is just one, it's showing both of their skills of like Taesung has to have a certain set of skills to be the information king and to like maintain these relationships and like be able to live the life that he has created for himself.
A lot of enemies.
Mostly enemies. And at the same time, ChaeOk also has to have these skills because I mean she's tailing some unknown man, well or not, like you need to be able to protect yourself.
Well, and we already know
any
that she's been going over like the Chinese border to go recover people, dead or alive,
right.
She's gotta be able to hold her own when she's cornered.
But I love it when so she has a knife and he even like makes a comment because she has like another little weapon and he goes, that's kind of brazen of you to carry that out in the open. Almost like, boy, you don't even know.
Yeah.
No idea what you're up against. Please sit down. But in the middle end of their fight, he knocks her hat off. She has some of the most beautiful hair. Can we just talk
Word.
about that? Great hair flip. I flip my hair constantly. It's a bit of a problem, but it's so pretty. And then she just like comes back up and our guy, he's already gone.
Oh, okay. So actually, funny thing about the hair flip.
Mhm.
So that scene, that shot took them a bajillion tries, like 2 hours of trying to
I'm
get it
her
just right, to get the hair just right. And her head, yeah, and her neck were just like gone. But then finally they kept instructing her to do it like a certain way, I think. And then finally she was just like, okay, I have a thought. Could I try it? And they're like, sure, why not? It can't get any worse than it already is, probably. So she did her thing, and I'm pretty sure that that's the shot that they used. So I'm just like, dang, girl. Um, but yeah, that final shot was amazing. And that's like, I think that's the one that people like always like clip for this
Mhm.
show because it's kind of iconic to the whole
Well, 'cause
fandom.
it's not like your typical like flip to the side. This is like from front to back. But yeah, our guy, TaeSang is gone. He's just like
Yes.
staring.
He's
they
in
have
awe of her.
yeah, like you hold it, girl. Like you're a threat.
Yeah. A very beautiful threat.
And tells her as much. Like, she
Well,
has
they finally call a truce.
Mhm.
And ChaeOk reveals, who she's searching for is this painter named Sachimoto in his mid-30s. TaeSang claims that he would not deal with such low-level information. This is not anything on his radar.
Right.
ChaeOk kind of pauses and she's a little bit disappointed, but then she reveals that she's also searching for her mother, who's been missing for a decade or more.
Mhm.
And TaeSang very brazenly suggests that Sachimoto was the lover that ChaeOk's mother ran away with, which earns him a slap in the face and the nickname Mr. Trash, which, was kind of fitting. But I like what he says here is he's like, I came from trash and maybe I dug through the trash to get to where I am, but you can't take that away from me. So
Mhm.
call me Mr. Trash. It might be apropos, but I have things that you want, and that's essentially, that's
That's
the
why.
point.
Right.
I'm rolling in cash and you can't stop me. But then
Right.
yes, he is still a gentleman and compliments her eyes as they part ways.
And just like you have very beautiful eyes. And just like the disgust on her face. It's like, yeah, I don't ever want to see you again. Like
Yeah.
you're gross.
Yes.
You're like I'm no Mr. Trash. But because she turns around and she's like basically like you're a horrible person, she has zero interest in him. And he's never had that because every woman usually is falling because, he's got the money, he's got the looks, he's got the prestige,
It's a very one-dimensional attraction.
and
He's okay with it.
he's
He
like,
doesn't
yeah.
care.
But I think that it's a moment for him just to be like, you're not just obsessed with me. I need to know you. Like I want to know you now.
Well, I think he just wants to know A, why she's such a good fighter, and B,
Why don't you want?
why is she knocking on his door? And what does all of this mean? Kind of
Mhm.
he's intrigued, I think.
Yeah, he's very
That's
interested
beautiful.
in her. Like what is
Yeah, it's like rage inducing that all of these women are just in these K-dramas. It's so effortless, it seems like. And I know they have a team of people behind them, but I'm like, bro, I look like a gremlin right now.
so
And
do
this
I.
camera angle gives me a double chin, and I just kidding. I digress.
Anyway.
So we put a face to the name with Sachimoto. He is an artist for the Japanese military who has some very like beautifully grotesque work, which is kind of like an underlying theme here where there's just like really beautiful things with a horrible backstory or a horrible meaning or some kick butt moves. I don't know. But this is we find out is the byproduct of just years of human experimentation and autopsy and its whole interesting journey.
Right.
But we don't get a whole lot. We just get a glimpse of this. So back to JunTaek, which was the one man with the audacity to be with the commissioner's wife.
Right. He would be
Played by Lee Ha-jun, which people might know him as the undercover cop from Squid Games. I knew him first from The King Eternal Monarch. He played another cop, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's been a minute since I've watched that one, but that sounds
Me too. I feel like he's in one more, but he is also in Bad and Crazy, which I would like to watch soon because it looks
so
very
good. His name is K, like
okay.
in that. It's so good. When I found out he was in GyeongSeong Creature, I was like, oh, yep, I'm in. Like, big
I've
fan.
liked him in everything I've seen him in, so
Yeah.
I was pretty excited to see him in this show too. But he's meeting with Taesung and reveals that he has no knowledge of this MyeongJa that people are looking for. But we do find out that he is part of the Korean insurgent group that's looking to recover their independence from Japan. He's
The owner of the bar, of the Moonlight Bar.
Mhm.
That is also his business. So he has,
It's his cover.
yeah, he has some standing because of that.
But he says to Taesung, he says, "You've earned your money like a dog, but you won't spend it like one." And Taesung spins around and he says, "I was born without a father and a country. What do you want me to do about it? I'm fine if you insult me, but don't insult my money. I worked like a dog to earn it, and I can spend it like one if I want to."
Mhm.
I just thought that was a really it's the first time I think we see a chink in his armor.
Right.
In terms of what's going through his mind, why he is the way he is, why he's living this Gatsby lifestyle. And we figure out he's an orphan, or at least fatherless, and he's never known anything but Japanese occupancy. So because I think they came onto the scene in 1910, we're in 1945, and he's clearly younger than,
Right.
at least his early 30s or so. So yeah, he's never known any other life, but he is one man supposed to do about it.
Never been something he was supposed to care about,
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of like it shouldn't have to be my problem just because I was born at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So Mori meets Taesong outside the bar, finally caught up to him after he slipped away at the restaurant, and Taesong just coolly asked him for a ride back to the pawn shop. And oh, that poor guy. He would feel so stupid. So back at the shop, or back at the lab, sorry. Back at the lab, General Kato is informed that test subject 1 is now showing, quote, symptoms, whatever that means. And one of the women in the cells is in throes, basically complaining that her head is hurting beyond
Right.
comprehension.
It's not just symptoms of change. She is like trying to open. She ends up like slamming her head into the ground. I mean, complaining that it hurts.
Yeah.
Even before she starts this, but she's not well at all.
Yeah, she's cracking her skull open on the floor of the cell. It's great. That was awful.
That was very odd.
Right?
And Kato's like made the decision. He's like, well, with her, we failed. Like, but also what did she have? And she just had the Najin, because it was like the Najin and then the serum. There's like something else.
They asked if they were ready to administer the serum, and he says, no, we need to wait, or something like that. Or they said, no, we haven't given her the serum yet, basically. And we have no idea what this serum is, but kind of in contrast, though, we see across the way, there's the other test subject.
And she's just there.
Also in pain, but very quietly and collected.
It's almost like she's gone through intense pain before, and just, this is how you cope with it. I just have to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, she's weirdly collected about it. It kind of reminds me of labor, where you're like, this sucks, but I guess we're here now, so we're just gonna like
Just gotta
do
go.
this thing. But we do finally see her double over, and she starts to retch, and as she's, losing the contents of her stomach. We see this little something inch up her spine. Yeah, it was awful. So the
In case
Najin is
you won't, Kim and I did the exact same finger movement.
the same inchworm. But that's exactly what it looked like.
And it's really gross.
It's unsettling. It makes me want to like scratch my own skin off. It was horrible. Well, and I just watched a video on fish with parasites, and I just
Don't do that.
it was a mistake. It was an unintentional mistake.
Oh,
But in this moment, I thought it was interesting that this woman bore a striking resemblance to the girl we saw at the beginning of the show in our opening title sequence because she's in blue.
yeah.
So there's that. Whatever that means. I don't think that she is necessarily this person, but I think that they intentionally put her in blue. Just throwing that out there. Nawol, she introduces TaeSang to the Sleuths. After he arrives at the House of Golden Treasure, she says, there's some people. I think that you should really look into their services. He spins around and he sees the girl that he had just had a gunfight with. Gunfight, not a gunfight. And so essentially they're trying to now weigh, the pros and cons of this relationship. They're trying to determine that if their mutual interests are going to line up enough that, they can move forward with one another. And they're
ChaeOk's
establishing
already over this conversation though, because
she
she's
already
like,
hates the guy.
and like, which is an unfair bias against him because, but at the same time, he did just insult your mother. So like,
But he thought that she was some kind of thug off the street. It's not like he,
idea.
had any idea who she was. But TaeSang is like not sure that these guys are up to par, so he's, questioning them about their previous work. And but basically he says, like her father says that, we've taken on about 200 cases in our 10 years of work, and we've successfully recovered about 140, which for that time and for their limited resources and the state of the nation, I'm like, heck yeah, that is.
And they even did like they were very thorough of like if that person was dead, we brought back their bones.
We brought back their remains, yeah. So they went the whole 9 yards.
Right.
But ChaeOk basically has one foot out the door this whole conversation, and she's standing up, she's trying to leave and trying to get her dad to go, and he's still, he's still trying to work out if there's something that can be offered that they can, But it wasn't until TaeSang reveals that the reason that because Nawol says, "What did you do?" And he goes, "I said her eyes were pretty." And her dad stands up and is like, "We're done. Goodbye." I was like, classic dad move. I loved it. But TaeSang reveals that he does have information on Sachimoto, and ChaeOk's basically like, "I thought you said you didn't deal in such low-level information," and he's basically like, "I am now because it suits my interests."
Right. I will change. There's like a comment of I will change my principles to suit my needs. Which is partially, as I think she kind of could already tell, when she just first asked the question of, do you know who Sachimoto is?
Right.
Okay, this is why I'm actually looking for my mom. And he just was very nonchalant, like he don't care at all. Not even just like to be a nice listening ear. Instead was very like rude. And so when he makes the comment of like I can change my principles to suit my needs, she's already like, you're disgusting.
Yeah.
Like you should be able to stand for something, even if it is
no convictions, you have no spine. Yeah. You're sleazy.
You're a weasel.
So our final scene is Sachimoto again. He has been asked to draw a specimen in the same lab that these two women were taken into, but he's warned by the guard there to not approach too closely, you know, as he may be injured. And so where you're just kind of like, okay. The cage is too dark inside, so he asks if he can use a torchlight to be shown on the inside of the cage, and what we see is a bit harrowing. There is blood all over the floor. There is a bloodied body on the floor.
Walls.
The walls, you see some handprints. His gaze follows the handprints that are now footprints and handprints. And you're like, okay, that's not
Normal.
And then up in the corner of the cell, there's something lurking. And then they jump scare you at the very end. And that was almost unforgivable, but I kept watching.
Very glad you did.
But it flies at Sachimoto, and we end the episode.
A heck of a way to end an episode.
That is, I was basically sold by that point. I was like, all right, I'm clearly finishing this show. But do we have a character of the hour?
I don't think yet, just because it is episode 1 and we know little to nothing about all of our characters so far.
I would think about more like a standout person. Like, who stood out to you the most?
Probably Miss Nawol, the housekeeper mother,
Sure.
you know, takes care of everything going on. Because obviously these people are all very capable.
Right.
But her capability has been, okay, I'm supposed to sell these pieces. Like, she's in charge of a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the beginning scenes, I don't think we really talked about it, is it Bomo? The
kid?
The kid, yeah, he has a cart and he's pushing it into this room, and she just walks up and puts her hand out, and he's like, what? And she goes, hand it over.
Mm-hmm.
Goes, what do you mean? She goes, hand it over. And he pulls a watch out of his pocket. She goes, you try stealing something again, you're out on the streets.
Yeah. She's Secretary Kim in 60 years. Just kidding.
And no romantic interest at all.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
She's supposed to move all of these big pieces in a very short period of time. She's the one who brings in these sleuths that are going to hopefully help.
Right.
You know, save their lives, basically, because who knows what Commissioner Ishikawa is going to do, because he's kind of a loon. I mean, your mistress went missing and you're electrocuting somebody for their help. Yeah, that's
totally okay. It's fine.
So yeah, I think in my rewatch, I think she would be my standout, just because that's she's telling him to be careful, and like there's a moment when they're talking about what the right move is after, he's been told, hey, you're going to find MyeongJa, like, and Mr. Gu comes up with an idea, and she goes, think before you speak, like you're an idiot.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. And like lays out like what his idea was, and lays out what the follow through is going to be. And it's like, that was very quick. Like you just know. So I think for me, she would be my standout. Maybe not just because character of the hour, where I don't think we're quite free. We can actually have one. We'll know more.
I feel like my character of the hour was TaeSang, because he's a multifaceted person trying to pretend that he's shallow and vapid, and that always intrigues me. What people's motivations are for acting like they don't see what's happening when they really see everything. And I mean, we know he sees everything, but we don't view him as empathetic or caring in any way. We just see him as someone who wants money, but then we see that there's hurts behind it, and there's a history there that we have yet to uncover. So I think that for that reason, I think he is my character of the hour, just because I want to know more about who he is.
Right.
ChaeOk, I feel like, is currently one-dimensional in the sense that she's a straight shooter. Like, she's honest.
Right. She doesn't put up with.
Right. She says what she thinks. She listens a lot. She doesn't say a whole lot, but I don't think that she has as many layers to peel back to get to who she is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
Not
there's
like an onion.
no, it's not that there's not going to be growth throughout the show. It's
Right.
just not the same types of growth.
Right.
I mean, even comparing already GyeongSeong Creature to What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, our two leads in What's Wrong with Secretary Kim had a lot of layers that they had to peel back, both of them.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, it's going to be different characters that have layers, not necessarily the direct.
Not just the plot.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I also love that I completely buy their disdain for one another.
Yes.
Like, there's no romantic chemistry there,
Mm-mm.
and there's no like hope for romantic chemistry. Like, this show does not focus on that. Like, this show is completely focused on
Survival.
the survival of the Korean people in the midst of the Japanese occupation, the survival of these prisoners in the midst of whatever the heck is going on there. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's a complete pivot from what we just talked about in terms of dramas. So it's kind of exciting. But
I love it. And
final
because
thoughts?
it's so new. Well, I love it. I love that it's, we already touched on it. It's kind of creepy, kind of haunting. That's my world. I like live. um, I'm really glad that we touched on the intro and, the very beginning, not just, skipping over the song of the story that's told there. And it's just so beautifully done. Like, I mean, the entire show is, but the way that characters are being set up right now.
Yeah, that whole intro just has its own lore. Like, when you look at other intros, like What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, for example, that's just what we keep going back to because that's the one we've analyzed already. It's just the characters in their settings doing what they do. There's no exposition. It's just kind of, we see what we see. It's just a face for the nameplate.
Right.
On the other hand, like you were saying, there's a lot happening in that intro, which sets up a lot of it tells its own piece of the plot that we don't have to sift through so much in terms of taking up actual story time because it's already been set up for us.
And that doesn't happen very often.
No, I'm trying to think of another one that I could compare it to, and I'm not thinking of anything.
I love the show. I'm so excited. And I'm so glad that we're doing like a brand new drama as well.
Yeah.
That just came out that we both have enjoyed. Like and especially new dramas are kind of scary because they're getting there's some that I don't like as much the newer they are.
They're getting a little clickbaity. They're getting a little Americanized in weird ways for me. On Netflix, it's kind of hit or miss. Vicky, I'm always like, it's probably okay. It's going to be a little quirky, but that's okay.
Might be painful. I'm here for it.
Well, that was GyeongSeong Creature Episode 1. This is going to be fun. I'm excited.
I hope next time we're actually in person.
Yes, I'll try not to die of some awful virus or weird creature in my water.
Check your water.
Check your water bottles, people.
Like what you're hearing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any new episodes. We'd love to connect with you on our Instagram at The KDrama Show. For more behind-the-scenes content, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. Links are in the show notes. Thanks for hanging out with us on The KDrama Show with Ashley and Kim, and we'll see you next time.